Hello again. You're back on with news composer Mary Hartley on Flapper News Now. Welcome back to our annual review and prepare to be educated on our economy's past. Young viewers beware, the New Deal isn't square. Now going live to our token conservative, Dorothy Rose. Dorothy, how are you doing?
Just fine, Mary, thank you. It's nice to see your shining conservative face again.
Liberal, Dorothy. You're the face of our economics department. Don't go getting soft.
Sorry, Mary. I just forget from time to time that your organization decided to steal a time-honored title from my esteemed colleagues and I.
You barely believe in women being able to have colleagues, Dorothy. Don't fool yourself. You're only here because your husband lost everything in the crash.
Why, Mary, if you wanted to give the report on the last 2 decades in the economy, you should have said so. Why don't I just go back to my office and start next week's report on arms sales?
Oh, no. Far be it from me to take work away from the needy. Pontificate away, sweetie.
Well, these last few years certainly have been trying. During the roaring 20s, as we call them, things looked grand. Parties every night, illegal liquor in the cabinet, and no concern over money whatsoever. The stock market boomed, and even the poor were able to get in on it, thanks to good old-fashioned capitalism. But in their own stupidity, they borrowed too much from the banks, the market overloaded, and we all experienced the losses that come with such a tragedy. So many lost so much in so little time.
Including you.
Including my husband, who hadn't the wit to withdraw a week prior as I had instructed. On top of all that was lost, the communists,
socialists,
began to take hold after things went into decline. FDR put into place a great deal of socialist policies. The Social Security Act, for example, requires that our taxes go to support the unemployed and elderly, while the Fair Labor Standards Act has set a minimum income wage, which restricts the rights of businesses to function as they please.
But allowing anyone not wealthy enough to own their own corporation to earn an income they can live on, particularly useful to the modern woman who rejects the societal expectations of male dependency.
And in other news, I become increasingly doubtful that I have any job security here.
Don't worry, Dorothy. It's our policy here that you can't be fired based on political affiliation.
How forward thinking.
Thank you. Go on.
Well, as everyone who hasn't been brain dead for the last 10 years probably knows, FDR put into place several public works administrations, most famously the CCC, Civilian Conservation Corps, but also the Public Works Administration, the Civil Works Administration, and the Tennessee Valley Authority. These have provided a host of work opportunities for the recklessly unemployed.
Like your husband.
Or your father. Regardless, there was also the Emergency Banking Act, which provided funds to failing banks in order to shore up the accounts of those who were at threat of losing everything. The Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation insured the accounts of individuals using banks in order to coerce the populace into putting their money back in the money traps. The Glass-Steagall Act has barred commercial banks from becoming involved in the stock trade, and in the panic arising organically from the failure of 1/3 of the nation's banks, the President was allowed to pass legislation at an alarming rate. The NRA sets standards for all kinds of industry, what they can and can't do, representing a step toward what the liberals call industrial freedom. Similarly, the Agricultural Adjustment Association set quotas for what could and couldn't be grown and how much a single farm could produce. Public housing became a concern of the government, and unions became acceptable in public. The WPA has turned our infrastructure into a public works project, and the Wagner Act has forbidden businesses from enacting unfair business practices. And it seems like that's all the time we have for today.
But Dorothy, we didn't even get to welfare or the fireside chats. I was sure that would have been your favorite part. And what about the effects these policies have had on America?
Well, in case you didn't notice, we're not exactly out of the Depression, are we? I'm off the clock, and I have another job to get to. And if I'm not there on time, the children I'm watching will vomit on the floor. Finish the cast on your own, if you won't.
Well, you have a nice day, Dorothy. Yes, folks, unfortunately, we are not out of this depression quite yet. And while FDR has done a lot, it doesn't seem to be quite enough. Sadly, in the subject of race relations, the New Deal seems to have done more harm than good. Thanks to economic disparities between whites and coloreds, as the NAACP says, welfare has come to be associated with blacks and vice versa. Mexicans have fled back to Mexico in search of better jobs, and FDR said to Walter White of the NAACP,
I did not choose the tools which I must work with. I cannot jeopardize my iconic programs by alienating powerful members of Congress.
But on the upside, his wife, Eleanor, has been an A-plus advocate for equality, and the labor unions have been crying for diversity. It's largely been the communists who have spread their ideals of equality, the only white party to make racial equality a priority. Dorothy can trash them all she likes, but they have their merits, don't they, Ivan?
Duh.
Thank you, Ivan. Indians have also made a major victory. In 1934, the Indian Reorganization Act recognized them as their own people and gave them control over their own reservations again. They suffered losses in return, of course, and it will be a while before we see true progress there. But trust me when I say...
It's
coming!
So with that said, let's go to Irma and James Quacks with a few human interest stories. Irma?
Thank you, Mary. James and I are standing in front of a tree here somewhere in New York.
And since we don't have a story to tell, there's no reason to tell you where.
Right. So without ado, let's go to the footage of the Lindbergh story.
East Amwell, New Jersey. Tragedy here in East Amwell, New Jersey, with son Charles Lindbergh, the first man in history to be in New York one day and Paris the next, has been kidnapped.
The police are searching everywhere, but there are currently no leads. A tire track, an envelope, the lower half of a ladder.
Intelligently designed, but cruelly constructed.
Are all that have been found in evidence. At a little less than 2 years old, we can only pray for the boy's safety.
Charles has declined an interview, but we'll be back with details as soon as they arrive. The ransom note demanded that neither the police nor media be contacted in relation to the event, and there is speculation that military officers may help with the investigation.
Irma Quacks here in Hopewell, where the crime of the century has ended in tragedy.
It's a sad day for America, Mary, and we're loath to be the one here to give it to you straight. Right here in Hopewell, just a short distance, where Charles Augustus Lindbergh Jr. was kidnapped 2 months ago, and despite the payment of captor's ransom, his body has been found.
It's been hours since the discovery was made, and the police have since vacated the premises. But from here you can see the shallow grave that was Junior's final resting place.
He's discovered by a truck driver who had pulled over to the side of the road to urinate. The police were notified and were told that the body was badly decomposed and in poor animal ravaged condition.
The autopsy hasn't yet been performed, but it's assumed that the cause of death was a large fracture of the skull. The baby was identified by the shirt he was wearing, made for him by his nanny, and by the 2 overlapping toes of his right foot.
As Herbert Hoover said of the finding of the boy, the federal agents involved in this case and the local police will move heaven and earth to find who did this, and will be right there, step by step along the way.
And in Violet Sharp, who committed suicide by nail polish a while back, has been officially acquitted thanks to a rock-solid alibi. A little late for that, but that's one suspect down. In other news...
It's been more than 2 years, but I'm Irma.
And I'm James, and we're happy to tell you
The Lindbergh killer is dead.
Can you see my eyes? Yes, that's right. Bruno Richard Hoffman found himself shocked at the verdict, which put him to death at 8:44 p.m. today, April 3rd, 1930. I think I speak for everyone, Irma, when I say that today is a great day to be alive.
James, I'm sure you're right. Today, a grieving family received closure, a police force had all their efforts validated, and a killer was brought to justice. It really...
Didn't we have more to that garage?
I'm certain we did.
Gary! Gary, is there an issue?
Some of our footage was eaten when that squirrel got in last year.
Oh well. It was a sad time to be in the news industry.
It was indeed, Mary, but it did do some good for the world.
That's right. There's a bird on the wing that says that there's a federal legislation in the works that would make kidnapping a federal crime.
Well, that's good to hear. There were sadder times still, though, weren't there?
Irma,
And James,
Quack's here to tell you the disaster has landed.
we're here in our nightclothes at the studio.
We're safe here in the southern tier, but down in Lakehurst, New Jersey, the story is a very different one.
The dirigible known as Hindenburg has gone down. It caught flame trying to dock at the Naval Air Station and crashed to the ground.
Of 97 passengers and crew, 35 have been killed, and on the ground, a 36th. The reason for ignition is unknown, but sabotage has been preferred as a viable possibility.
As you can see, the studio's pretty empty. It's 9 p.m. and a few of our cast and crew have lost their family members and not yet received a word of life or death. So it's just us here.
The tragedy occurred at 7:25 p.m. The hydrogen burned itself out in around 35 seconds, but the diesel continues to burn.
We have no names, no reason, no absolutes, and very little information, but we'll be back the minute we do.
Irma and James Quecks here, signing off.
Christ. That was beautiful.